Right now, we'll continue the Eagles conversation, go a little deeper on the Jets, as right now at 97.3 ESPN.com, John McMullen has 5 on the Jets, and you can learn a little bit more about this week's opponent, the New York Jets, at our website, 97.3 ESPN.com. Although, we'll start off locally with the Eagles because, yet again, John, I got the sense that Chip Kelly is maybe getting a little bit of overexposure. They are throwing him out there, 4 times this week. He's talking right after the game, Monday at 1 o'clock. He's talking Wednesday and Thursday. I feel by the end of Thursday he wants to strangle one of you guys.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much on Monday. But, yeah, it's a little bit of a surprise that he's talking this much. Especially, if you consider the fact that they've gotten off to such a poor start. And, I think part of it is, though, that that's all Chip does. I mean, if you think about coaches in the past, not just Andy Reid, but all over the country, they would have their own television shows or radio shows. He doesn't do things like that. So this is really his only conduit to the public. And I think, they realize he's at least got to go through that 15 minutes or so. And, sometimes you can tell he's feeling better than others. And right now you can tell he's not feeling all that well because he's not giving us a lot. As I said, he kind of admitted Kiko Alonso is not going to play on Sunday, which we all know anyway. But he still hedged his bets. And obviously, we don't have a lot of clarity on the DeMarco Murray situation, but, you get the feeling from just being in that locker room that they're preparing for Ryan Matthews to be the starter, but We'll see how it all works out.
I wanted to further on that. So you get the feeling that Murray will not play on Sunday. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I do. I wouldn't say it's by no means a concrete feeling. I saw him walking today, and to be honest, he looked pretty good, and there wasn't any limp to his gait or anything like that. But there's just that sense around the locker room that they're preparing for, Ryan Matthews and Darren Sproles to have a more of an impact on this game, understand what they're doing in the run game. He kind of copped to it, admitted they realize it's just going to be inside zone, and people are sniffing it out. But obviously, you're not going to see Chip Kelly offense have a quarterback under center for more than a play here and there. So anybody looking for a fullback or an extra offensive lineman playing tight end in sort of those jumbo formations you'll see Packers use or somebody like that, you're just not going to see that here.
John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. We'll get to 5 on the Jets in it. The update today on Kiko Alonso, he will not go this week, but is there anything further past this week, or is this going to be a week-to-week thing until they declare him potentially out for the year, if that, in fact, is the decision?
Yeah, it seems that way. He keeps saying they're still evaluating it. I don't think there's much evaluation. It's either one or the other. It's either you're going to race it up, let him rest a couple weeks and let him try to play, or you're going to have the season-ending surgery. That's really the only evaluation. I can't imagine the doctors have gotten together and are hedging on that. It's either one or the other. And I believe that Kiko wants to try and play, and maybe that is the little gray area that they have in that, they're trying to decide whether to let him go out there and risk further injury or get the, precautionary surgery and hope he's ready as a full go in 2016.
John, let's get the ramifications of Cedric Thornton being out. Chip Kelly did talk a little bit today about what are some of the options at that position. So if you can kind of lay it out there for the listeners, what the anticipation will be with Thornton being out.
Well, remember, it's not only Cedric Thornton, it's also Taylor Hart. So normally it would be, Hart would come in and that would be the plan without a hiccup. But he hasn't been able to practice yet this week with a shoulder issue. So he's very iffy for Sunday. So they could be down 2 defensive ends, and that means, Chip admitted today that Vinny Curry would be moving up back to the front line, and Brandon Barrow hasn't dressed yet this season, would obviously be up and playing. And, that's a guy who who dressed for all 16 games last season. So Taylor Hart kind of leapfrogged him on the depth chart this year, and he hasn't been able to get on the field Sunday. But he's a veteran guy. He's played 5 years in this league, and I think they would lean heavily on him early in rundowns, and then go to Vinny Curry for a potential pass rush if they needed it.
John, he has talked a lot, and today I don't want to say he was contentious about it, but he seems like he wants to get his point across that they do not run a lot of zone read offense. And I guess the perception is I'm in a shotgun, and that means we're running zone read. What exactly does Philadelphia, what does Chip Kelly run on offense? What is he trying to portray when he says, I don't run the zone read that you guys think I'm doing? What exactly are they trying to do in their running game?
Well, I think he's right to a certain degree, but he's arguing semantics. He's not running zone read because the quarterback can't run it. In other words, in a traditional zone read, a true zone read, it's a player like Russell Wilson, for instance, in Seattle, who is a legitimate threat to run the football. Everyone knows because of the injury that Sam Bradford isn't going to keep the football. So most of those zone read looks are called runs because the option is taken away because the quarterback is not capable of carrying it out. So he's arguing, it's true, but he's arguing, a semantics point. It's the look of the play. It's not, the result or the fact that he called a running play. We all understand he called a running play because Sam Bradford can't keep the football. So I think that part of it is overblown from both sides, both the people who talk about it and Chip who thinks we talk about it too much. I think the bigger issue is the actual mechanics of the play and the fact that when you're offset in that shotgun formation, it gives the opposing defense time to penetrate, and that's been the issue, is that penetration, which has, resulted in so many negative plays. If you take that away and have a quarterback under center, for instance, and a fullback, you're not going to have those negative plays. But Chip Kelly doesn't believe in that philosophy of offensive football, and he's not going to change even though the running game hasn't been effective.
John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN. For more on the Eagles and the Jets, he mentioned, somebody asked him today, Bradford has not had the opportunities to keep and run the ball. Last year, Foles, you would see him keep it here and there. I guess the same with Sanchez. I guess a lot, locally, Dave Weinberg from the Press of Atlantic City wrote a piece basically suggesting that the Eagles should bench Bradford because he's not mentally ready. And is that why you see him checking down and not running with the football all that much? I mean, do you sense that Bradford maybe shouldn't have started this season? Was he mentally over this injury and ready to go?
I don't know if it's the mental part. I think mentally he's over it. I think it's the physical part. He's not capable. It's, as much as we don't think of Nick Foles as a running quarterback, and correctly so, same thing with Mark Sanchez, you still had that other option in the fact that they could keep the football and move forward, whether it was for 3 or 4 yards, if it was there. If somebody, truly came down and really collapsed on the running back, they could take that 3 yards. Sam Bradford can't take that 3 yards because I just don't think he feels comfortable with his knee and feels comfortable to run the football. And by the way, the Eagles agree with that because they won't allow him to do it. So I think the argument holds more water if you point to his physical well-being as opposed to his mental well-being. I think the check down is all the checkdowns is really the result of the fact that the receivers can't get separation down the football field, and the running game can't get going. So it's very difficult to sit back in the pocket and let those kinds of plays develop because everything's imploding.
Right. He was asked about the Jets. They blitz a lot. They got 2 pretty good linebackers as well, which he commented on. He was asked about the responsibility of the receivers to get open in their man coverage. Is this an area for you, John, that the Eagles are going to struggle in trying to get these wide receivers open this week?
Well, yeah, and a lot of it depends on the health of Darrelle Revis. I mean, that could be the underreported thing of this week because he suffered some kind of groin injury against Indianapolis on Monday. He wasn't able to practice yesterday. And, you know, the Jets could look at this game and look at the receivers and say, we don't need Revis. So there's a possibility they could play the Cousins out. I don't think they're going to, but it's a possibility, and that would obviously help the Eagles. It's hard to imagine their receivers getting open against corners like Revis and Cromartie and Screen, but in a weird way, as good as this Jets defense is, and is very good, they have really good players at every level. In a weird way, this defense is going to help them because of the way they play. The Eagles have come off two teams that play a lot of cover 2 and a lot of cover 3. So you had 2 or 3 defensive backs deep on every play. And as Chip pointed out, they never had to bring one of them towards the box because they didn't need to. The front 7 was doing a good job shutting down the run with no help. The Jets, they don't play that way. They don't want to play that way. They don't like playing that way. They like to play aggressive. And in a way, that should help the Eagles because you know what they're going to do, and the fact that you have to beat them. You have to beat the cornerbacks, and you know they're going to be very aggressive on the front. So hopefully they can make something out of that.
Well, I was going to ask you that follow-up about the safeties because he did comment that they aren't taking shots down the field because, you know, teams are playing their safety so deep and you know, therefore, and I guess in the past we've always kind of said, well, teams were bringing that safety up, and yet they still weren't really taking a lot of shots down the field in the past either, right? I mean, last year, that extra safety man was coming in and taking McCoy out of the mix because of, you know, a lot of people believe that Jackson not being there, that safety was kind of creeping. And now Chip's kind of saying, well, they're playing their safety so deep, you know, and I guess the question is, they didn't go down the field a lot last year. They're not doing it again now, so does it even matter where that safety is?
Yeah, to a point, you're right, because it does, at the end of the day, it comes down to talent, and I'm not sure they have the guy who can get down the football field and stretch the field, and that's the bottom line, no matter what the defense is doing. I kind of agree with that part. But
as much as, John, as much as he kind of discounted, I believe it was Bob Ford's question, I don't know, but, you know, he said something, you know, he's like, I recognize it's a difficult throw, but when you have a quarterback you trust and the talent out there, when Foles, you just throw it up sometimes and see if your receiver can make a play, right?
Yeah, and you're going to see it. You're going to see it this week with Brandon Marshall, who, as I said, he might be the best receiver in this game about getting 50-50 balls. And you're going to see the Jets throw it up to him occasionally, and more often than not, he's going to come down with it. When you have a player like that, you're very, very comfortable doing it. Similarly, you saw it with Julio Jones. You would have seen it with Dez Bryant. Eagles don't have that kind of player, bottom line. So it's very difficult to say, you know, Nelson Aguilar or Josh Huff go up and get the football. They're not proven at this level, especially against guys like Revis and Cromartie. It's just, you know, that's a recipe for disaster.
All right, John McMullen has 5 on the Jets right now at 97.3 ESPN.com. Plus, you know, you can take a look over, you can get John's prediction a little early before we let it go on the air. But let's take a look at the Jets here a little bit. Todd Bowles and this defense. Is this a better Jets personnel defense than the one he had in Arizona, which I think was very, as they're playing out west, it's, you know, hard to follow them, but they were very good defensively. Does this team have better personnel?
Well, that's a good question because they both had very good personnel. The Cardinals had tremendous personnel, and the Jets do also. I would give a slight edge to this Jets team if Sheldon Richardson comes back at some point because then they'll be so stout up front with Mo Wilkerson along with him, and they have the linebackers Harris and Davis, and you know, the defensive backfield is without peer in this league. It's the best secondary in football this season. So this has the potential to be right there with, you know, Seattle and all the defenses we think of as one of the top 2 or 3 in football. And you got a really smart guy running things in Todd Bowles. So it's, you know, we talk about a perfect storm of ineptitude here. It's kind of on defense, at least. It's a perfect storm coming together for the Jets in a good sense because when you have talent with a great scheme and a guy who understands how to use it, that's when you see special things happen.
John, Ryan Fitzpatrick is the quarterback. Geno Smith was supposed to be the quarterback. Was it a blessing in disguise that Ryan Fitzpatrick has been inserted?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question it was. And not that Ryan Fitzpatrick obviously is anything special, but we've seen enough. It's not a small sample size before. I think you've kind of seen what he is. I think it would have improved a little bit because Marshall is there, so that would help. But he's just not consistent throwing the football point, very inaccurate. And in this game, this era of football where accuracy is so important, and Chip Kelly talks about that, you can't have a guy who's not going to complete 60% of his passes, never mind 65 or 70, like the truly elite quarterbacks will do. Fitzpatrick, understands the offense because Chan Gailey's the coordinator, and he obviously started for him when they were both involved. And he's just a veteran guy. He understands. He knows how to play in this league. He knows his limitations. His issues start to come, forefront when he's behind. So, if you're down 10 or 14 points, he's not the kind of quarterback that can bring you back and fit the football in the tight windows. So, the Jets know he's limited, but for their purposes and the way they want to play, which is, play to the strength of their defense, I think he's a good fit.
And it helps when you have a Brandon Marshall, and we'll see if they get Eric Decker back this weekend. And, there's a team that is very defensive-minded, so they don't have to make a lot of plays on offense. When you can, as you mentioned, go for 50-50 balls, that's a big help there. And then last but not least, you got Bowles here. Obviously, I don't know that it's a big storyline or that he wants to prove a point that, hey, I was there and you guys didn't retain me. I think he paired up with Bruce Arians because he knew Bruce Arians. But obviously there is a little history between Bowles and the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, I don't think there's much from his standpoint, to tell you the truth. I think it's Philadelphia looking back and thinking about, wow, we had somebody here that's turning into a star in the coaching profession, and we didn't even know it. From his perspective, he wasn't really on many people's radar. Took off there, and obviously he's doing a very good job early in his head coaching career. And he just looks like one of those guys that very similar to, I think, Mike Zimmer in Minnesota. Just no matter what you have defensively, it's going to be better than what it looks like, because they just understand schemes and how to do things in this league. And you can really count those guys on one hand. There's not a ton of them anymore, and I think Todd Bowles is one of them.
John McMullen has his pick for this game, 73ESPN.com. You'll hear it live on the air tomorrow when we wrap up the Eagles' week at practice. They are heading to Monmouth University to finish up because the Pope is coming to Philadelphia. So even the Eagles get shut down in Philly when the Pope comes to town. We'll have more on this team as they get ready for the Jets, trying to avoid an 0-3 start. And John McMullen has more on this matchup at 97.3ESPN.com. All right, John, we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Hey, thanks, Mike.